Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Good, good. I'm trying to figure out where my volume is here. Hang on. There we go. We'll give everybody a couple of minutes to join in and see who's here. Meanwhile, just so you know, we're recording this so that people who aren't here, or if you want to go back and revisit, you can log on. So let's see. While we're waiting, what time is it? Oh, we got a whole minute. So running a laboratory section online is not optimal, if you haven't guessed. This is one of those classes that you really should be in person. There's just so much you can learn by being in genetics lab, learning the techniques, actually having some hands-on experiences. But the one thing that's really, really good about being online is I get to have coffee. Not allowed in lab, if you haven't guessed. So let's give everybody just a couple of more minutes. You like my background? Good. So I swapped over to a Mac laptop because on my other laptop, I can't see any chat messages. So this enables me to catch up a little bit. All righty. A couple of folks are just joining in. We'll give them just another few seconds and then we'll get going. This will be a pretty laid back introduction. You may have noticed that some of the lab sections don't start until next week. I don't do that. I start first week of class, I start labs mostly because I figure you guys are paying for it. So you ought to get me for as much time as you possibly can. It's a little bit different now that we're online. Not nearly as much fun, I don't think, but we do the best we can. We do the best we can. And everybody's in the same boat, by the way. So let's go ahead and get started. You should have all by now received an invitation to join LabArchives. Okay, LabArchives is the electronic lab notebook. I have been using electronic laboratory notebooks probably for the last 20 years. I've used a lot of different ones over the years. Last year, I actually gave a talk on at Rutgers at a meeting of lab scientists, talking about the variety of different ways that one can have an electronic laboratory notebook that actually fulfills all of the requirements of a lab notebook. Now, you guys as undergraduates may only be familiar with, for example, your chem lab notebook, and you probably had at some point the one where you could tear out pages and hand in one. Sometimes they have like a carbon paper kind of thing in it, so you could write in your lab notebook and then turn a page in and get copies. Even just a bound essay type notebook you may have used perhaps in high school. Just one of those composition notebooks that you use. I have one. I use these a lot. These are great. I always use the ones, I don't know if you can see it, graph paper. I'm a huge fan of graph paper. I use these a lot, but none of them are really official laboratory notebooks. And especially if you get a job out in industry, you will learn to fill in a laboratory notebook in great detail. If you work in industry and you're working, working in a laboratory of any type, you're going to record data in a lab notebook. And at the end of the day, it actually gets countersigned by your immediate superior. So you have to sign it saying, I really did this work. And then your immediate superior signs it saying, yes, that person really did this work and it's accurate. And one of the reasons that you have these details in a laboratory notebook is so that you can fulfill all of the laws that are involved in patenting and patenting information, but also copywriting information. Also, remember that in industry, you probably won't work in that lab forever, or for example, grad school. And so the work in your lab notebook has to be detailed enough that whoever comes in after you can repeat exactly what you did. And so lab notebooks are incredibly important for the laboratory experience. I happen to focus on electronic lab notebooks because a lot of times paper notebooks in a laboratory get, you spill things on them, you mess them up. I remember when I took analytical chemistry when I was in college, one of my classmates actually copied over the lab notebook so that it would be perfectly kind of this pristine, beautiful lab notebook. And the instructor failed her for the lab because her lab notebook was too neat. And he said, lab notebooks can never survive a year in the lab without getting spilled on, burnt. You pretty much name it, it happened. And of course, she cried a lot. And it was very sad, but most of us laughed because our notebooks were a wreck. But sometimes it's inconvenient to have a paper lab notebook, and that's just the reality of it. Also, sometimes you want to work on a lab notebook and you're not in the laboratory. Lab notebooks in a real lab never leave the laboratory. They stay in the lab. You don't get to take them home. You don't get to do anything. But electronic lab notebooks are great because you can review the information from anywhere. So I have a handful of requirements for an electronic laboratory notebook. First of all, that they be in the cloud, accessible from anywhere, that they work on any operating system, so I don't have to force you to buy an expensive piece of equipment. Hey, buddy, who's barking? All right, if you have animals in visiting class, you got to show them on screen. All right, that's the rule. No cats' butts, though. So I'll bring my dog in if you want. So when we think about lab notebooks, we want them to work on any operating system. They should work on Macintosh computers. They should work on PCs. Windows, hate them. Hey! Well, I hope I didn't put him to sleep.
He's already sleeping.
Awesome. So I think Bart is in the other room sleeping, so you'll have to wait to see her. She'll show up now and again. But the other end of it is it should also work on portable devices, because in today's world, you're not only carrying, we don't all carry laptops around, but we have smartphones. So you should be able to access data and your lab notebook from a smartphone or a tablet or a phablet or whatever you want to call it. And finally, the lab notebook has to be consistent with all of the other laws and rules we talked about for maintaining proprietary information, for patenting purposes, copywriting purposes, etc. So there are very few electronic lab notebooks that fill the bill in that context. I actually was involved with the laboratory in Paris, and we actually put together one. It's actually a WordPress installation. So those of you who know a little bit about computers and blogging software, we modified a version of WordPress. All I can say about it is it works. It's not very elegant, and it tends to be a little cranky at times, and it does work. But one of my former students from here at Stockton, he worked with me for a couple of years, about 10 years ago, went to get his graduate degree. In fact, he graduated a couple of years back with a PhD in molecular biology from the University of Maryland Medical School. And he introduced me to a rather new program, and that's how I found LabArchives. I used it for a couple of years in my research side of the world and adapted it very quickly so that it could be used by us in genetics lab. And I've been absolutely thrilled with it. The other side of it is it's actually cheaper than buying the printed lab notebooks. And so cheaper is good when it comes, from my perspective, cheaper is always good. Trying to make things work a little bit better for you guys, but also getting you used to industry standards. The reality is any job you get in the future, you're going to be attached to devices. It doesn't matter whether you're feeding the elephants at the zoo, you're taking somebody's blood pressure in a doctor's office, entering medical information in the hospital, taking any work you do is going to be on a computer, usually a tablet, sometimes a smartphone. So I think the more we can get you used to dealing with these kind of systems, I think the better off you'll be in the long run in terms of your experience and being able to get a good job and succeed in the job. So let me show you LabArchives. Just take me a moment to share my screen. Don't panic. It's only a cooking show. I do believe this is it. Maybe. Hang on. There we go. So this is LabArchives. I believe that you can actually sign up for LabArchives without paying for it for a couple of weeks. So if you're in panic mode and you think you might have to drop genetics, you actually get about, I forget what it is. It's either 3 or 4 weeks of working with it for free in case you think you might bail or if you're terrified of doing all this online stuff. I really think genetics lab is not hard, never was. And I think it's even easier online, which I don't necessarily think is a good thing, but it's just the reality of the situation. Now, quick question, although I can't see my chat screen anymore. Has everybody been able to log on to LabArchives?
Yes.
Might be easier to ask, has anyone not gotten it yet? Ah, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So if you've had a chance to look it over, it's pretty straightforward. This is our 2021 version. Some of the videos in here are still the old videos, and the reason is we haven't updated them yet. So I'll update them as the semester goes on. This is the other great thing about the electronic laboratory notebook is the old printed kind, once it's printed, you're kind of stuck. That's what you get. In this one, when I make spelling mistakes, I can go correct them. And you can call me up and say, Dr. B made a mistake. And I'll be like, no, look, it's beautiful. There's no evidence of my mistake at all. So I enjoy that part of it. Genetics lab is pretty straightforward. We'll talk, you can read all this stuff for you. What do you need? Obviously, if you're reading this right now, you need to have the laboratory manual as an electronic laboratory notebook, an internet capable device, a calculator, preferably scientific, feel free to use the app on your phone or your tablet. You don't need to go buy something. You also need, for our purposes, spreadsheet software. You have to have access to Microsoft Excel, Numbers if you're on a Mac, or Calc, which is a part of LibreOffice, which is an open source, free competitor to Microsoft Office. LibreOffice is a great alternative. Again, works on any operating system, is completely interchangeable with all the Microsoft products, not the Mac products, by the way. You are going to need a real physical copy of Microsoft Excel, whether you do it on your own computer or have access through a university computer. And the reason is the Office 365 version of Microsoft Excel does not allow you to do some of the graphing that will be required in 2 of the labs that we'll be doing during the course of the semester. So you need access to a real graphing capable spreadsheet program. Again, you should have access through the university to get a free copy of Microsoft Excel, but I'm not sure. They keep changing. They're trying to force everybody to go to Office 365, meaning the cloud version of Microsoft Office. But unfortunately, the cloud version doesn't have all the graphical capabilities of the, I guess, the locally installed software version. If they want to charge you for it, then I highly recommend that you get LibreOffice Calc. LibreOffice is free. It works on any computer and does a great job. In fact, I use it all the time. It's my the entire LibreOffice system I use on my Linux computers all the time, and it interacts fine with Microsoft Excel. The last thing you will actually need is, one of our labs is to get you to actually draw a pedigree. It'll be your own personal pedigree. And I highly recommend this software called HaploPainter. HaploPainter, and the link actually works here. HaploPainter is an open source program. It is Windows based, but it is very, very well behaved and will work on Windows emulation in both Macintosh or computers, Apple computers, but also Linux computers. So it really does a nice job. It's just a very well done, well behaved software package. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get back to our pedigree drawing. There are a couple other options. The bottom line is I don't accept hand-drawn pedigrees, okay? God made computers just for us, so you don't have to look at my crooked lines. I am completely incapable of drawing a straight line without a computer. So this is one of the reasons we have them, and it makes your life very easy. If you look under our Administrivia tab here, you can see that there's the whole pandemic safety issue. We don't really have to worry about it. We're as distanced as you possibly can get. And also some further information about technology, expectations, etc., and blah, blah, blah. You can read some of that stuff there. The most important thing that everybody worries about is, of course, what are we going to do? And so I'm going to, I don't know if you can see all that. There we go. Hopefully, yeah, that'll work. You can see we have a calendar of events here, and it's really, the calendar matches up mostly to the lab exercises in the left-hand column here. And I say mostly because we have more laboratories than we actually have time to do them. And you may wonder, why did we do that? And the answer is, we sometimes, depending on the semester, have to switch around laboratories. And so I don't want to get rid of the information and delete them from the online notebook, but we will not be doing everything that's in that left-hand column. What we will be doing is noted in the calendar of experiments. For example, you see today and this week, we're going to be doing exercise 1.1. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And if you kind of go down, you could see that we actually do, for example, in Drosophila, we're actually going to skip most of the Drosophila experiments. If you navigate over to the side, you could see, whoa, there's a lot to do under Drosophila. We're actually not going to do all of these. Why? Because we don't have the ability to make our own Drosophila crosses, wait for them to hatch, evaluate the phenotypes, et cetera. So to me, one of the best parts of genetics lab is actually learning to do the crosses in Drosophila. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. So we're going to do something a little bit different during our online labs, but we are going to complete, if you notice on the side here, we are going to do the what's in a color. And if you look down here, you could see there is a what's in a color Drosophila. And what this enables us to do a little bit later on is actually give you an opportunity to work with a real data set that was collected here at Stockton. And so, so we won't do the bulk of these half dozen or so exercises, but we will do the last one. And again, these are all indicated in our calendar section. You can see we're going to do a little COVID lab. That's a new lab for this year. Give us a chance to learn some bioinformatics. We're going to be doing some other kinds of exercises, and we're going to end with, in opposite order, we're going to end with population genetics and pedigrees. So pretty straightforward. These should more or less coincide with what's going on in lecture. Obviously, the pedigree is the one that's most out of order. We do pedigrees way down here at the end. Oops, sorry. We do pedigrees down here at the end. Mostly this is to accommodate spring, or rather fall semester classes, because it's always fun to go home at Thanksgiving and put your pedigrees together if you have a chance to see family. And so that's kind of why it stays here at the end of the calendar. Grading is really pretty simple. With the exception of 2 exercises, all of the exercises are worth 10 points. 2 exercises are worth 20 points. And you may wonder to yourself, why in the world are these 2 particular exercises, the one on DNA damage and the one on gel electrophoresis, why are they worth 20 points? And the answer is those are the 2 labs that will require graphing analysis in a spreadsheet program. So that's a little bit more of a higher level technique. And so that gets a couple extra points there. All told, the grades are pretty much just adding up all the points and dividing by the total number of possible points, and that's it. And that's it. You can kind of see up here, most of the questions are pretty easy. You'll see some of them you can probably do. Some of the exercises you can do in 5 or 10 minutes. Basically, as long as you do them on time and get them correct, you'll get 9.5 points. Okay, why 9.5? Because 9.5 is 95%. It's a solid A. However, exceptional answers will get the full 10 points. Now, does that mean, I don't know if that matters to you or not, but it always bothered me that some people spend a lot of time answering even simple questions to answer them completely, and they should get a little bit of a benefit in terms of score than somebody who even though they answer it correctly, may spend less time and less effort on it. So may not seem like a lot to you, but I find that I find that being able to offer that difference on a weekly basis can really help you out down toward the end when we calculate them all and put them together into a final grade. I try to be very flexible when it comes to submitting assignments. I do not think these are burdensome assignments, even the ones that are worth 20 points. They're really not burdensome. They're the kind of thing you can do fairly quickly. And because of that, they have to be done on time. In general, the assignments are due the week after they are assigned. In a regular genetics lab, you might actually do them while we're in lab because the labs can be short and you could sit there in the lab for the last half hour of the lab and actually finish the assignment. However, since we're working at a distance, I basically give you until the next week to actually complete the assignment. They're really not hard. I think that's about it. Any question on, LabArchives. Something that I do want to show you is you can look in your LabArchives and wait 1 second so I can get this. And LabArchives does provide you with a course manager. You can go to that tab in the upper right-hand side, and basically you can see all your grades. You basically can see all your grades. So LabArchives has its own grade book. It does not interact very well with Blackboard, even though they say that it does. And so I keep the grades separately on LabArchives, and then I'll transfer them to Blackboard at some point manually toward the end of the semester. But if you want to see them, they're all here, okay? And you can go right in and look at them. I don't know why this is such a pain. There we go. So any questions about LabArchives? Going once, twice. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy. Now, our first exercise, and the one that I wanted to give you a quick introduction to right here, is our Geniventure assignment. As I noted before, we are unable to do what really is our great, which is really our great Drosophila breeding experiment. And I do miss doing that. I should let you know. But what we do have is another model organism, and some colleagues of mine at the University of Massachusetts have put together a little game using dragons as a experimental or model organism for genetics. So this entire, the entire online simulation will get you to learn a little bit about dragons and a dragon breeding experiment. I think it's fun. I don't know if any of you do any online gaming or not. I think this was a really great idea that they had. Now, everybody's name and user ID is at the bottom of the Geniventure intro slide. So everybody's here. I know it's another user ID to have to write down. Your temporary password, your temporary password is up here, is genome005, obviously no brackets. The genome005 will get you into the system. I highly recommend that you change it as soon as you get there. Not that I think that anybody is going to be taking your class or doing anything or changing your scores. It's really not that big a deal. But this is how you get in. The starting place for this, and I recommend you start at the logon site, which is at learn.concord.org, okay? And it looks like this. And I don't know why I can't move my, yeah, maybe I can. There we go. And it looks like this. If you go to the logon site, and if you go to the logon site at learnconcord.org, you could see here's where all of the information is. You're going to log on. Mine already automatically fills in. This is a great opportunity to mention. I don't know how you guys manage your passwords, but there are a number of ways to manage your passwords. I do not use the default password manager in either Chrome and or Firefox. I actually use a program called LastPass. LastPass is a great password manager. There's another one called Password One, password and the number one, which is very popular. There's also KeePass, which is a fun one, written in Unix and works on any operating system. I happen to use LastPass, no particular reason, but this way you can actually use complicated passwords and very secure passwords without having to memorize them all or keep them on a Post-it note. When I was at Penn State, one of the great security breaches in the Penn State financial network, so this was part of the bursar's computational system where people could transfer money in and out of their accounts, occurred because one of the secretaries who had access to the bursar computer kept her user ID and password on a yellow Post-it note attached to the monitor on her desk. And so some students noticed it. They came in after hours, logged on, and started transferring money around. Great fun. Okay, so you don't want to write down passwords on a Post-it note and keep it near your computer. You need some way to keep track. I use LastPass. You can use whatever type you like. Once you log in, you will see on the left-hand side a drop-down box that says classes. I happen to have my fall classes still listed here. However, we are in the spring. So again, you drop down the box and you get to the assignments. And when you look at the assignments, there are three. There is the initial assessment, the Geniventure game itself, and of course, the Geniverse final assessment. Now, for this week, I would like you to do the Geniverse initial assessment. That happens before you do anything else, okay? It's basically tracking your current knowledge of genetics, all right? Real simple. Because it is tracking your current knowledge of genetics and not anything you've studied for or played the game, you get 0 points. Okay, there are no points. This is not a graded effort. Okay, the whole point is to find out what you know before the game. And then obviously at the end, you take the final assessment, which tells us what you learned between before you started and after you're finished. The Geniventure game itself is made up of 4 parts, creatively numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. There will be a brief assignment on LabArchives after doing parts 1 and 2, and then after doing parts 3 and 4. And then, of course, you take the final assessment. So each of those 3 assignments are worth 10 points apiece. So those are your first 3 real assignments for Genetics Lab. The initial assessment is not graded. It's not scored. It's really for us internally to decide if we want to keep using Geniventure as part of our lab system. Right now, just to give you some sense of the universe, we see a substantial increase in scores between before you take the game and after you take the game, which kind of makes sense. If you're learning something along the way and you're also answering written assignments based on the game in LabArchives, well, then when you do the final assessment, you should be a lot better at it. And the answer is, well, you are. So I'm not entirely surprised, but the universities these days like to have actually numbers assigned to assessments. And so that's why we do it this way. And it kind of justifies our continued use of Geniventure. So once you get in here, you can actually look in here. It gives you, this is for me, I get to see how your progress is. Obviously, nobody's done it yet. And so if you hit the button, it takes you right into the Geniventure game screen. And you start working in the game screen. You could see here's the great laboratory. You could see here's a diagram of the dragons. Here are all the people talking about dragons and breeding dragons. It's great fun. I actually like it. It's a lot of fun. You could go into mission control. You could do, and of course here it starts you out. It shows you the map and gives you missions, and you work on each of these individual missions. Showing you all of the great things we get to do in a laboratory situation. And there we go. And so here, of course, is our first effort. I like their old-fashioned ticker tape system for the computer, and you get to work right in here, and it begins to show you definitions of chromosomes, what are genes, gives you a nice ideogram of the chromosomes. And by the way, if you take a peek at it, it's a 3-chromosome system. So it's actually, and notice that it's got 2 X's. X's are females. You can slide it over and see males are XY. So you could see this is really based around the Drosophila model system. Drosophila, of course, have 4 chromosomes. And so this lets you go through and to work on the, proceed through the game and work on your dragon breeding and dragon genetics process. It starts out just as we do with rather simple genetics and moves its way forward. And I think I might be able to show you, and moves through to some more complicated genetics, actually looking at some biochemical genetics and actually how proteins are formed from the DNA code. So really, it's very similar to our lecture series of information. So I am going to stop the share, come back to our spot here. So that's pretty much it. Nice and easy. From a management point of view, I don't think that we're going to meet much in person throughout the semester. Everything can be done right from the lab manual. That doesn't mean that you won't get to see my beautiful face because I have a variety of recorded videos all set for you. Some of them are a little bit older, and however, they'll be updated as we move along through the class. I know that there are some people actually taking the class who are counting on it being completely asynchronous so that they could fit it in their schedule, and especially because they're not on campus. So, questions, concerns, stuff I forgot.
Will the labs be like Can we work with partners, or is it just individuals?
Absolutely, you can work together. I have kind of hesitated creating like we would in a laboratory on campus. You'd have people. My hands disappeared there for a minute. Sorry, it freaks me out. I've hesitated creating like a lab bench where you have several people working together. Only because I don't know enough. We're not always in the same place at the same time. But if there's somebody you'd like to work with, if you'd like to pair up or just communicate with one another, you can do that either through LabArchives or independently. Either way, I have no problem at all. There are some exercises, for example, the two which will require computer graphics and graphical analysis. While you can certainly work with someone else, you have to submit your own spreadsheet. You have to submit your own assignment. Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Make sense? Let me just share real quick. I'll show you one thing about LabArchives. Give me 1 second. Oh, come on. There we go, LabArchives. And I'll show you, for example. Let's look at, oh, here's a good one. So here's one on, we call it the Mammalian Coat Color Lab. This is one where we actually have, we used to bring in the animals from the animal lab, and Mr. John Rakita usually does a presentation. He does a phenomenal job, and they put together a little presentation of him presenting genetic variation in different animals that we have on campus. And the unfortunate thing is that it's huge. It doesn't translate very well to our online notebook, but part of the assignment is basically putting together genes to create different colored mice. This can be assigned, and if I go up here, you can actually, I don't get it as a, I don't get the option as an instructor, but in this yellow box that dictates the assignments, one of the things is you'll have a box for partners where you can indicate your partner. So if you indicate that you worked on it with a partner, you only have to store the information from the assignment on one of your lab notebooks. Both of you will have access to it, and I'll see on my end that you both worked on it together and will both get graded on this single assignment. So this lab notebook is great for working together. However, for example, if we look at our gel electrophoresis assignment here, for example, this is one in which you have to individually do it. So in other words, this is one, you can certainly work with somebody, but you have to submit your own graphs and your own spreadsheets, okay? And I'll let you know, it says it in here. It'll say it so in the instructions, and I'll let you know ahead of time and make sure you understand which ones are which. The class word, ooh, I hate that. I gotta look, hold on 1 sec. The class word is diallele, D-I-A-L-L-E-L, diallele. And I'll put it in my chat box here so you get it. Now remember, that's not the password. The password is genome005, and it's indicated on the intro to the Geniventure assignment. Not bad. Any other questions? Going once. All right, so please remember to take the assessment in terms of timing. If we were supposed to be in lab, we would have been there till about 10:30 or so. So you're welcome to do it now and get it out of the way. I mean, take your time and find what works for you. All right? Have a great weekend. I will be talking to you at least through email and online and through LabArchives. And if we do need to meet again, just give me a shout and we can always meet by Zoom at any time. Okay? Take care, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Professor, I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Could you show me where the assessment again?
Where what? I'm sorry.
The assessment?
Oh, the assessment. I'm sorry. Yeah, let me go back and share my screen. Where'd my screen go? One sec, I don't see it here. Hold on one second. There you go. So once you log on into the learn.concord.org, and you go on your left-hand column, you should be able to pick a class and look at your assignments.
Yep.
And then you see the first one is your initial assessment.
Okay. So do we have to finish these ones before next class?
Yes. Well, no, only the first one.
Okay.
Only the initial assessment. If you look at the schedule of events.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so for next week, you have to do missions 1 and 2, and then the assignment is actually for next week. Okay, so this week you do the pre-assessment. Oops. This week, you have to do the pre-assessment. Next week, it's assignment 1, which if you look on the left-hand column here is there.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Anytime. You take care. Have a good week.
You too.
Bye-bye.